Hello student, I am Professor Smita Jha from the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences, and I am here to discuss today methodology in research, which is the backbone of any research methodology, a very scientific subject. And not only as a researcher, but as an academician, one should know research methodology. So let us see what it is about. Research may be broadly defined as systematic gathering of data, sources, material, and information, and its analysis for advancement of knowledge in any subject. Research attempts to find answer intellectual and practical questions through application of systematic methods. Webster's Collegiate Dictionary defines research as a studious inquiry or examination, especially investigation or experimentation aimed at the discovery and interpretation of facts, revision of accepted theories or laws in the light of new facts, or practical application of such new or revised theories of laws. So some people consider research as a movement from the known to the unknown. Research process consists of series of action or steps necessary to effectively carry out research. These actions or steps are: first, formulating the research problem; second, extensive literature survey; third, developing the research hypothesis; fourth, preparing the research design; fifth, determining the research design; sixth, collecting the research data; 7. Execution of the project; 8. Analysis of data; 9. Hypothesis testing, generalization and interpretation; and 11th, preparing of the report or presentation of the result. So formulation of research problem, at the very outset, the researcher must decide the general area of interest or aspects of a subject matter that he or she would like to inquire into, and then research problem should be formulated. However, selection of problem is not the first step in research, but identification of the problem is the first step in research. Selection of problem is governed by reflective thinking. It is wrong to think that identification of a problem means to select the topic of a research or a statement of the problem. A topic or a statement of the problem and research problem are not synonyms, but they are inclusive. The problem concerned with the functioning of the broader area of field studied, whereas a topic or title or a statement of the problem is the verbal statement of the problem. The topic is the definition of the problem, which delimits or pinpoint the task of a researcher. So when we talk of identification of a research problem, we can follow, some of the steps important to identify a research problem. So step number 1, determining the field of research in which a researcher is keen to do the research work. This is all part of research methodology. Step 2, the researcher should develop the mastery on the area, or it should be the field of his specialization. Step 3, a researcher should review the research conducted in area to know the recent trend and studies are being conducted in the area. Step 4, on the basis of review, a researcher should consider the priority field of the study. Step 5, a researcher should draw an analogy and insight in identifying a problem or employ his personal experience of the field in locating the problem. A researcher may take help of supervisor or expert of the field. Step 6, a researcher should pinpoint a specific aspect of the problem which is to be investigated. Now, the sources of the problem: first, the classroom, school, home, community, and other agencies of education are obvious sources. The next, social developments and technology changes are constantly bringing forth new problems and opportunity for research. Next, record of previous research, such specialized sources as the encyclopedias of educational research abstract, research bulletin, research report, journals of researches, dissertations, and many similar publications are rich sources of research problems. Next, textbook assignments, special assignments, reports, and term papers will suggest additional areas of needed research. Discussion, classroom discussion, Seminars, exchange of ideas with faculty members and fellow scholars and students will suggest many stimulating problems to be solved. Close professional relationship, academic discussions, and constructive academic climate are especially advantageous opportunities. So there should be questioning attitude towards prevailing practices and research-oriented academic experience will effectively promote problem awareness. And the most practical source of problem is to consult supervisor, expert, peer, pioneer of the field, and most experienced person of the field. They may suggest most significant problems of the area. The researcher can discuss certain issues of the area to emerge a problem. Although research problems should not be assigned or they shouldn't be proposed and allotted by a guide, but consultation with the more experienced faculty members or research worker is a desirable practice. One of the most important functions of the research guide is to help the student clarify his thinking, achieve a sense of the focus, and develop a manageable problem from one that may be vague and too complex. And if we talk of extensive literature survey, once the problem is formulated, the researcher should undertake extensive literature survey connected with the problem. And for this purpose, the abstracting and indexing journals and published or unpublished bibliographies are the first place to go to academic journals, conference proceedings, government reports, books, etc. must be tapped, depending on the nature of the problem. So when we talk of development of working hypothesis, we may say that after extensive literature survey or review, researchers should state in clear terms the working hypothesis or hypothesis. Working hypothesis is tentative assumption made in order to draw out and test its logical and empirical consequences. It's very important, or it provides the focal point for research. Preparing the research design after framing hypothesis, we have to prepare a research design. That is, we have to state the conceptual structure within which research would be conducted. The preparation of such a design facilitates research to be efficient as possible, yielding maximal information. In other words, the function of research design is to provide for the collection of relevant evidence with optimum effort, time, and expenditure. But how all these can be achieved depends mainly on the research purpose. It also depends on determining sample design. A sample design is a definite plan determined before any data is actually collected for obtaining a sample from a given population. In census inquiry, we involve a great deal of time, money, and energy. So it is not possible in practice under many circumstances. Sample designs can be either probability or non-probability. With probability samples, each element has a known probability of being included in the sample, but the non-probability samples do not allow the researchers to determine this probability. And if we talk of collecting the data, there are several ways of collecting the appropriate data, which differ considerably in context of cost, time, and other resources at the disposal of the researcher. Primary data can be collected either through experiments or through survey. In case of survey, data can be collected by any one or more of many ways, like by observation, through personal interviews, through telephonic interviews, by mailing of questionnaires, or through schedules. Execution of the project is a very important step in the research process. If the execution of the project proceeds on correct lines, the data to be collected would be adequate and dependable. A careful watch should be kept for unanticipated factors in order to keep the survey realistic as much as possible. And the analysis of data and resources requires a number of closely related operations such as establishment of categories, the application of these categories to raw data through coding, tabulation, and then drawing a statistical inference. Analysis work after tabulation is generally based on the computation of various percentages, coefficients, etc., by applying various well-defined statistical formula. In the process of analysis, relationships of differences, supporting or conflicting with original or new hypotheses should be subjected to tests of significance to determine with what validity data can be said to indicate any conclusions. And after analyzing the data, the researcher is in a position to test the hypothesis, that is assumption. If any the researcher had formulated earlier, do the facts support the hypothesis or they happen to be contrary? This is the usual question which is to be answered by applying various tests like t-test, f-test, etc. F-tests have been developed by statisticians for the purpose. Hypothesis testing will result in either accepting the hypothesis or in rejecting it. If the researcher had no hypothesis to start with, generalization established on the basis of data may be stated. Generalizations and interpretations can be talked about if hypothesis is tested and upheld several times. It may be possible for the researcher to arrive at generalization, that is, to build a theory. As a matter of fact, the real value of research lies in its ability to arrive at certain generalizations. If the researcher had no hypothesis to start with, he might seek to explain his findings on the basis of some theory. It is known as interpretation. Preparation of the report on the thesis is very important. And finally, the researcher has to prepare the report of what has been done by him. The layout of the report should be like the preliminary pages, the main text, and end matter. The preliminary pages carry title, acknowledgement, and foreword, and then index. The main text of the report should have introduction, review of the literature, and methodology. So, criteria of good research: one, expect scientific research to satisfy such criteria. Number one, the purpose of the research should be clearly defined and common concept be used. Number two, the research procedure used should be described in sufficient detail to permit another researcher to repeat the researcher for further advancement, keeping the continuity of what has already been attained. Number three, the procedure design of research should be carefully planned to yield results that are as objective as possible. Number four, the researcher should report with complete frankness flaws in procedural design and estimate their effects upon the findings. Further, the analysis of data should be sufficiently adequate to reveal its significance, and the methods of analysis used should be appropriate. The validity and reliability of the data should be checked carefully. Next point is conclusions should be confined to those justified by the data of the research and limited to those for which the data provide an adequate basis. Next, greater confidence in research is warranted if the researcher is experienced, has a good reputation in research, and is a person of integrity. So why is research methodology so important? It gives research legitimacy and provides scientifically sound field findings. It also provides a detailed plan that helps to keep researchers on track, making the process smooth, effective, manageable. A researcher's methodology allows the reader to understand the approach and methods used to reach conclusion. A research cannot be random, a strategy. Having a sound research methodology in place provides several things, like other researchers who want to replicate the research have enough information to do so. Like researchers who receive criticism can refer to methodology and explain their approach. It can help provide researchers with a specific plan to follow throughout their research. The methodology design process helps researchers select the correct methods for the objectives. And it also allows researchers to document what they intend to achieve with the research from the outset. So, objective of research methodology is to provide a clear framework. One of the primary objectives is to provide a systematic framework that guides the entire research process from start to finish. And this ensures that the study remains on track and is conducted systematically. To ensure accuracy by adhering to a structured methodology, researcher can minimize biases and errors, thus enhancing, enriching the accuracy of the result. And to enhance reliability, employing standardized methods enhances the reliability of the research findings, allowing others to replicate the study under similar conditions. And also, to facilitate peer review, a well defined methodology allows peers to evaluate the research for its validity and reliability, which is crucial for its acceptance and credibility. To provide insight and understanding, any research aims to provide insights and a deeper understanding of the topic being studied. The right methodology is crucial in achieving this objective effectively. These objectives underscore the importance of research methodology in conducting and evaluating effective research. So, a statement of problem, if we talk about, very important as part of research methodology, which is defined by Kernlinger like a problem should be concerned with relation between two or more variables. This is a very good problem statement, the criteria. It should be stated clearly and unambiguously in question form. It should be amenable to empirical testing. Meeting these criteria in his problem statement will result in a clear and concise idea of the researcher wants to do. This sets the stage for further planning. And if we talk of aspects of delimiting as a problem, so delimited to certain variable that should be mentioned clearly in the problem, delimited to the area or level as primary level, secondary level, college or university level, delimited to size of sample considering the time, energy and money, delimited to the best method only, delimited to the best available tool for measuring the variable, delimited to the most appropriate technique. Other delimitations particular to a problem, as the delimitations in the previous discussion, helping the researcher for conducting their study, the findings of a study is also confined to these delimitations. How to evaluate the problem? So when considering a problem, a researcher is required to ask himself a series of questions about it. These are helpful in the evaluation of the problem on the basis of personal suitability of the researcher and social value of the problem. Now, what are the problems? Before, a study is undertaken, is the problem researchable? Is the problem new? Is the problem significant? Is the problem feasible for the particular researcher? And in order to be feasible, the problem should agree with research competencies of the researcher, interest and enthusiasm of the researcher, financial consideration of the project, time requirement for the project or research, administrative consideration in the project. So, justifying your methodological choices, which is a very critical part of any research project, as it demonstrates the rationale behind how you conducted your study and ensures its credibility. To effectively justify your methodology, you need to clearly explain why you selected particular methods over alternatives, showing that they are the most appropriate for answering your research question, because each chapters is going to deal with the questions you have posed initially. And formulation of hypothesis consists of two words, hypothesis. Hypo means tentative or subject to the verification. Thesis means a statement about solution of the problem. Thus, the literal meaning of the term hypothesis is a tentative statement about the solution of the problem. In fact, research is argument and counter-argument. Hypothesis offers a solution of the problem that is to be verified empirically and based on some rationale. Again, hypo means the composition of two or more variables which are to be verified, and thesis means position of these variables in their specific frame of reference. Any supposition which we make in order to endeavor to deduce conclusion in accordance with facts which were known to be real under the idea that if the conclusions to which the hypothesis leads are known truths, the hypothesis itself either must be or at least likely to be true. So let us see the importance of hypothesis. First, investigator's eye. Carter V. Good thinks that by guiding the investigator in further investigation, hypothesis serves as the investigator's eye in seeking answer to tentatively adopted generalization. 2. Focuses research. Without hypothesis, a research is unfocused research and remains like a random empirical wandering. Systematic process is very important. So hypothesis serves as necessary link between theory and the investigation. Third, clear and specific goals needed. A well thought out set of hypothesis places clear and specific goals before the research worker and provides him with a basis for selecting sample and research procedure to meet these goals. 4. Linked together according to Barr and states, it serves the important function of linking together related facts and information and organizing them into whole. And 6. Prevent blind research. In the words of P.B. Young, the use of hypothesis prevents a blind search and indiscriminate gathering of masses of data which may later prove irrelevant to the problem under study. Next coming guiding line. Hypotheses serve as powerful beacon that lights the way for the research work. It provides direction to research and prevent the review of irrelevant literature and the collection of useful or excess data. It sensitizes the investigator certain aspects of situation which are irrelevant from the standpoint of problem and at hand. It enables the investigator to understand with greater clarity his problem and its ramification. It is an indispensable research instrument, for it builds a bridge between the problem and the location of empirical evidence that may solve the problem. It provides the investigator with the most efficient instrument for the exploring and explaining the unknown facts. It provides a framework for drawing conclusion. It stimulates the investigator for further research. So hypothesis, very important, stand as a question represents the simplest level of empirical observation. It fails to fit most definition of hypothesis. It frequently appears in the list. So there are cases of simple investigation which can be adequately implemented by raising a question rather than dichotomizing the hypothesis forms into acceptable, rejectable categories. Declarative statement developed as a declarative statement provides an anticipated relationship or difference between variables, such as hypothesis developer has examined existing evidence which led him to believe that a difference may be anticipated as additional evidence. It is merely a declaration of the independent variables' effect on the criterion variables. So a researcher requires many data such as gathering tools or technique. Tests are the tool of measurement and it guides the researcher in data collection and also in evaluation. One has to select from the available tools those which will provide data he seeks for testing hypothesis. It may happen that existing research tools do not suit the purpose in some situation, so researcher should modify them or construct his or her own. Different tools used for data collection like questionnaire, that we have already discussed earlier. And what are the characteristics of good questionnaire? It deals with an important or significant topic. Its significance is carefully stated on the questionnaire itself, on its covering letter. It seeks only the data which cannot be obtained from the resources like books, reports, records. It is as short possible, only long enough to get the essential data. It is attractive in appearance, nearly arranged and clearly duplicated or printed. Directions are clear and complete. Important terms are clarified. The questions are objective with no clues, hints, or suggestions. Questions are presented in a order from simple to complex. Double negatives, adverb, descriptive adjectives should be avoided. Double barred questions or putting two questions in one questions are also avoided, should be avoided. The questions carry adequate number of alternatives. So it is easy to tabulate, summarize, and interpret. Address any limitations or potential biases in your methodology as a researcher and explain how you plan to mitigate these. Be transparent about any constraints related to sample size, data collection technique, or potential external influences that could skew your finding. And what are the characteristics of good interview? Can probe into causal factor, determine attitude, discover the original of problem. It's appropriate to deal with young children and illiterate person. It can make cross-questioning possible. It helps the investigator to gain an impression of the person concerned. It can deal with delicate, confidential, and even intimate topic. It should have flexibility, sincerity, frankness, truthfulness, and insight of the interviewee can be better judged through cross-questioning. It gives no chance for respondent to modify his earlier answer. It is applicable to survey method, but it is also applicable in historical, experimental case studies and clinical studies. So each researcher has to write a research proposal before he undertakes any research work. For a new research, it presents a great problem because he does not know the components of any research proposal. Even an experienced research worker is required to write a research proposal if he proposes to obtain financial assistance for a research projects from any research organization. In our country, NCERT, UGC, AICT, ICSSR, etc. have developed their own research formats, but a few basic components are common to all well-prepared research proposal. Now, title of the proposal, which is very important. A good title should clearly identify the research proposal and must clarify certain things like what variables are included in the research proposal. What is the relationship between the different variables? What is the population to which the results may be generalized? The research proposal is time-bound document. Thrust areas of research changes from time to time. Only such areas should be selected which are of crucial importance these days. The research proposal should be related with practical problems. It should provide solution to any existing social, behavioral, educational, institutional, library related problem. The research problem should not have a small target population because its result cannot be verified. Target population of any research problem should be related to a popular population. Now, tips for writing research methodology. Use a methodology that is appropriate for your research problem. Explain the relevance of your methodology to your research design. Introduce the instruments you will use to collect data. Consider any challenges you face during your research. Cite relevant research to support your methodology. So what to avoid in writing methodology section of your research? Avoid including irrelevant details. Keep your methodology section straightforward and thorough. Details that do not contribute to the reader's understanding of your chosen methods should not be included in your methodology section. Irrelevant information include unnecessary explanation of basic procedure. Basic procedures should only be explained if they are unconventional and unfamiliar to the reader. Do not ignore the problems you might encounter during the data gathering processes. Instead of turning a blind eye, describe how you handle them. Thus, researcher must consider a variety of factors in choosing the best methodology for their study. In most cases, research questions and objectives play a significant role in defining the most appropriate research methodology to use. Also, critical theories which play a significant role in methodology. With this, I conclude today's discussion on methodology. Till then, thank you very much. Let us meet in the next lecture with hypothesis and how to develop hypothesis for a sound research. Thank you very much.